Picture this scenario for a moment. Two candidates stand before voters on election night. The first speaks with raw authenticity about economic challenges ahead. No sugarcoating, no false promises, just uncomfortable realities delivered with integrity. The second candidate paints a different picture entirely. Confident solutions, easy answers, exactly what exhausted voters desperately want to believe. Guess who claims victory when ballots are counted? This isn't a story about right versus wrong. This is about a fundamental truth that most people refuse to acknowledge. Throughout history, those who shaped empires and commanded nations rarely won through pure honesty alone. They understood something darker, something more complex, something that challenges everything we've been taught about virtue and success. Today, we're diving deep into forbidden knowledge, the psychology of power that built civilizations, the strategic thinking that toppled kingdoms. This isn't comfortable wisdom, but it might be exactly what you've been missing. 5 centuries ago, a Florentine diplomat witnessed something that changed his understanding of power forever. Niccolo Machiavelli watched kingdoms rise and fall. He saw honest leaders destroyed by cunning rivals. He witnessed virtue become weakness in the hands of those too naive to recognize the game being played around them. His conclusion shattered conventional wisdom. Human beings are fundamentally selfish creatures who break promises when it suits them. Therefore, keeping all your promises to them becomes an act of self-sabotage. This observation forms the bedrock of strategic thinking that modern leadership books refuse to acknowledge. Consider your last major negotiation. Did complete transparency serve you well? Or did the other party use your openness as ammunition against your interests? Most people learn this lesson through painful experience, yet they continue believing that honesty always wins in the end. But what if that belief is precisely what keeps you from achieving your biggest goals? Machiavelli painted a vivid picture of effective leadership through an ancient metaphor. Every successful leader, he argued, must embody two creatures, the cunning fox and the powerful lion. The fox recognizes traps before stepping into them. The lion intimidates wolves before they attack. One without the other leaves you vulnerable, he observed. Pure cunning cannot overcome direct threats. Pure force cannot navigate sophisticated deceptions. Napoleon Bonaparte mastered this duality better than perhaps any leader in history. During the Austerlitz campaign, he played the fox perfectly. He convinced enemy generals that his forces were weak and retreating. Austrian commanders, believing they had cornered a desperate opponent, advanced into what became their destruction. Yet when Napoleon returned from exile, he became the lion. No battles were fought, no shots were fired. His mere presence and reputation compelled an entire nation to rally behind him once again. Most people attempt success using only one approach. They're either completely transparent or exclusively forceful. They play only fox or only lion. True strategic mastery comes from knowing which animal the moment demands. Here's where conventional wisdom completely fails you. Machiavelli discovered that perception shapes reality more powerfully than actual character ever could. Everyone observes your external presentation, he noted. Very few ever experience who you truly are beneath that surface. Julius Caesar understood this principle with devastating effectiveness. While systematically dismantling the Roman Republic, Caesar maintained every appearance of respecting traditional institutions. He refused ceremonial crowns in public while privately concentrating unprecedented power. He appointed senators while stripping their positions of real authority. Romans needed to believe their republic still existed. Caesar gave them that belief while transforming their world entirely. This wasn't hypocrisy. This was strategic leadership. Consider how this applies to your own challenges. When interviewing for positions, do you immediately reveal every weakness and insecurity? When pitching ideas, do you emphasize risks over potential? Of course not. You present strategic versions of yourself, not lies, but carefully curated truths that serve your objectives. The difference between you and history's great leaders isn't the strategy, it's the scale and intentionality. Perhaps Machiavelli's most counterintuitive insight involves the relationship between short-term harshness and long-term compassion. Actions that appear cruel immediately often prevent greater suffering later, he observed. Conversely, choices that seem kind now frequently lead to widespread pain over time. Napoleon's rise to power illustrates this principle perfectly. After the French Revolution's chaos and bloodshed, he imposed what seemed like harsh measures. centralized authority, rigid bureaucracy, swift punishment for opposition. Yet these apparently cruel actions created stability after years of upheaval. By establishing clear authority quickly rather than attempting gradual, gentler transitions, Napoleon prevented the larger cruelty of continued civil war. Think about management situations you've witnessed. The supervisor who avoids difficult conversations with underperforming employees seems kinder in the moment. But what happens over time? Performance continues declining. Team morale suffers. Other employees grow resentful. Eventually, more dramatic action becomes necessary, affecting more people more severely. The temporarily harsh approach, direct confrontation early, actually prevents greater suffering later. This is strategic thinking at its most sophisticated level. The ends justify the means remains Machiavelli's most misunderstood concept. People twist it to rationalize selfish behavior, but that completely misses the point. What Machiavelli actually wrote was far more nuanced. In actions where no higher authority exists to judge, outcomes matter more than methods. Abraham Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War exemplifies this principle. Was it constitutional overreach? Probably. Did it help preserve the Union during its greatest existential threat? Also, yes. The Machiavellian question isn't, is this action virtuous in isolation? But rather, will this action create outcomes that serve something larger than myself? Your definition of that something larger determines whether you're a strategist or merely a manipulator. Here's what most people get completely wrong about building reputation. They believe it requires complete transparency about methods. Machiavelli understood it requires something entirely different. Consistency between promises and results. People judge primarily based on outcomes and surface appearances, not behind-the-scenes methods. Henry Kissinger mastered this understanding throughout his diplomatic career. He spoke publicly about peace, while privately prolonging conflicts to improve negotiating positions. He supported stability while facilitating covert operations that overthrew governments. He promised one thing while delivering something entirely different. Yet Kissinger remains one of history's most respected diplomatic figures. Why? Because his contradictory methods ultimately produced results that reshaped global affairs for decades. Your reputation depends not on perfect honesty about your processes, but on consistent delivery of value to others. Here's one of Machiavelli's most cynical yet powerful observations. Those who most loudly demand your complete transparency often benefit most from your compliance with their demands. People are simple and obey immediate necessities, he noted. Those who deceive will always find others willing to be deceived. Consider salary negotiations. Who benefits when companies demand transparency about your salary expectations while keeping their own ranges secret? Who benefits when negotiating counterparts demand to know your bottom line while hiding theirs? Julius Caesar's enemies constantly invoked republican virtues against him, not primarily from principle, but because those traditions protected their existing power and privilege. Their appeals to virtue were weapons designed to disarm a threat to their dominance. This doesn't mean all ethical principles are manipulations. It means examining who benefits when you adhere to particular principles in specific situations. Despite advocating strategic deception, Machiavelli placed enormous value on loyalty, but strategic loyalty, not blind loyalty. The first method for judging a ruler's intelligence is examining the people he surrounds himself with, he wrote. Napoleon's relationship with his marshals demonstrates this principle perfectly. He promoted talent regardless of background, created meritocracy that inspired fierce loyalty, and rewarded success generously. With this trusted inner circle, Napoleon was far more honest about plans and intentions than with the public or enemies. This transparency multiplied his effectiveness and helped build his empire. The Machiavellian paradox: strategic opacity with the many enables genuine trust with the few, and those trusted few become your greatest strength. We've covered controversial ground, so let me be crystal clear. I'm not advocating dishonesty as a universal approach. What I'm suggesting, what Machiavelli suggested, is strategic awareness of when complete transparency serves your goals and when it undermines them. The ethical application of these principles involves using strategic positioning not for selfish gain at others' expense, but for creating value that benefits both yourself and others. understanding that leadership sometimes requires projecting certainty amid doubt, that negotiation sometimes requires keeping cards close, that managing perception is as important as managing reality. In a perfect world with perfect people, complete honesty might be optimal strategy. But in our imperfect world, with complex humans pursuing intricate goals, strategic discretion sometimes achieves more good than rigid transparency. So ask yourself, what goals matter most to you? What methods will achieve those goals most effectively? And when is strategic positioning justified by the value it creates for yourself and others? Machiavelli's ultimate lesson is perhaps his most important. Power is neither good nor evil intrinsically. It's a tool that amplifies the intentions of its user. If your intentions ultimately serve others while also serving yourself, strategic thinking isn't immoral. It's effective. In a world that often weaponizes virtue against the virtuous, a little strategic thinking might be exactly what you need to win without losing yourself. The choice, as always, remains yours.